Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. It is episode 2591 of The Tom Woods Show, and it occurred to me a little bit belatedly, I happen to know a guy who made a film related to January 6th, and here we are, the week of January 6th. Why am I not talking to him? So, eventually the wheels start turning in the old man's head, Jason. Eventually I get around to these things. So I want to introduce to everybody once again Jason Rink, who's been on the show before. But the film in question is called American Shaman. We're going to talk about that, of course. But something has happened. There's been a transformation in Jason's life since the last time he's with us, because for a long time, Jason has quite rightly dubbed himself the most canceled filmmaker in America. But now his film is available on Apple TV. So something happened between then and now, because in fact, as we were saying just before we started recording, there was a time a few years ago when my wife and I happened to be out in Las Vegas, and you were heading out to Las Vegas, and you were so canceled that there was some question that you might not be able to get a hotel room in Las Vegas in your own name. So we were sitting there thinking about, well, we could get a hotel room in our name, and you could stay in the room. I mean, it was wild, Jason.
Yeah, you were going to take one for the team, man. It's like you were going to harbor. Are you harboring canceled people under the floorboards? Is what it would have been. But yeah, it's great to be with you, Tom. And I know this is like fourth or fifth time I think I've been on your show over the years. And glad to be here. You were one of the people that put me on your show when I was toxic in the world of activism and political media. So yeah. And just to remind your listeners, I'm a Ron Paul guy from 2007, 2008 days. Go back to the libertarian movement for a number of years. Have been making films now over a decade. My first film was Nullification: The Rightful Remedy with the great Tom Woods. That was the first thing I ever made, so I've been making films since then. And I just released this film, American Shaman. It's about the QAnon shaman Jacob Chansley and what happened to him on January 6th and in the aftermath. And we just got it released to Apple TV, and it will also be coming to Amazon, Tubi, a lot of other outlets eventually. But yeah, a far cry from when in 2021, when we first got, we got the interview with Jake on January 7th. I was out here in DC on January 6th, 2021. I was filming a documentary on the Stop the Steal movement, and January 6th happened. We were not expecting it. And this crazy guy showed up on social media in the horns and face paint. And we happened to have his cell phone number because we had interviewed him 2 weeks before. And so we interviewed him on January 7th. It was the only interview that he gave, sit down interview, completely off, unguarded. And he was arrested 2 days later. And so we ended up getting this really incredible piece of content. And so immediately we created a trailer in January 2021. We started shopping it around to the streaming platforms because we thought this is going to be big. People want to see this. Well, I lost all my social media channels. I was banned for inciting violence for posting a video of the Q Shaman. And in the conversations we had with the Netflix and Hulu's of the world back then in January 2021, we were told we will not platform the Osama bin Laden of Jan 6, right? So that was the mentality around this film. And, going into the following years, when I was in that dark time of being banned, made another very controversial film that got me kicked out of hotels in Vegas. But I'm back now. We're in a new era today. Donald Trump has just been sworn in as president. There was no riot at the Capitol. And I've got a film on Apple TV, so it's an exciting day.
Yeah, it's an amazing transformation, honestly. And what's odd is that the film itself, which revolves around at the beginning this interview that you got on January 7th, it's not like when you first came out with it. It's not like you've since then changed it drastically to satisfy the censors. It's the same thing that they said was too dangerous for people to see. It's the same damn thing. What's also noteworthy is that you're not advocating for this guy. You're just letting him talk. You're not saying there's some things he says that, frankly sound downright crazy. and you just let him talk. And people can decide how they feel about it. This guy, whatever you think of him, is a significant figure in American history. He symbolizes, in a way, what happened on January 6th. And it's crazy that you could make this film, and in effect, initially it was, a series of shorter pieces, but that you could do this just getting the information out there. And that even that was so bad that you had to be treated in this crazy way, like you weren't a real person.
Yeah. And, I was shocked, and your listeners probably don't know this, but, that's not the end of the story, because the January 6th committee came after me, so they came after me to try to get my footage. We wouldn't give it to them. They leaked communication from my lawyer to them, to The Guardian. The Guardian wrote an article about this crazy Stop the Steal movie, named me in it. 9 days later, the Department of Justice and the FBI came after me. They were going to subpoena all of our footage. The IRS audited me. I've just settled with the IRS, okay, for quite a sum much less than what they wanted to try to get me for. And so over the last 3 years, I've just because I was here on January 6th, making a film, filming content, never went on the Capitol lawn, never went in the Capitol. I have had a lot of trouble come from this. And, I think what they wanted to do is shut me down. I was fortunate that I was in a situation where I could sort of weather that storm. My income wasn't tied to some woke corporation that, I was going to get fired from. So I was able to weather that storm. I had some resources to be able to make sure I could do that. But the funny thing is that it's this story they didn't want to get out there. And, on the surface, it sounds bizarre. It's like, the shaman guy, really? But what's interesting is, the media made him the face of that day. They made him the Osama bin Laden of Jan 6. They made it seem like he's this dangerous individual. And many people saw through that, right? But a lot of people didn't. A lot of people are still stuck in that narrative. And I think the funny thing is Jacob Chansley, the Q shaman, his story, once you really get to know him and see what he went through, he spent, I believe, 9 or 10 months in solitary confinement before he finally pled guilty to the charges. He spent, I believe, 29 months in jail when all was said and done. In a way, I think one reason his story is powerful, and we cover that whole journey in the film, is because it's ridiculous. Because making this guy who literally wouldn't hurt a fly, who's this vegan who, was literally chanting and sort of clowning around, making him the monumental threat to the Republic. Once that mask is ripped off, it's ridiculous. And I think it is a valuable part of undermining the Jan 6 narrative. And of course, now I think more and more people understand that it was very trumped up, that the Department of Justice was weaponized to throw over 1,000 people in jail, overcharging them with crimes in order that people would plead out, which is what happened. So where I think we're getting to the end of that nightmare, and Trump has said that he may be commuting the sentences of 1,000+ people. We'll see what happens on that. But that's why I think this is an important story, because they did this to Jake, and whatever you think about his beliefs, whatever you think about his decisions, he made some really poor ones. Did he deserve that? And was he somebody that needed to be locked away for that time? And then you just look at some of the other people who've been locked away longer than him. He pled out. He was one of the first people to take a plea agreement. So he went into jail and came out. He's been free for over a year now. They were still just getting around to throwing people in jail once he got out. That's how long the Department of Justice has been doing these cases. So it's an important story because I think once you see it, you say, this is ridiculous. And then you start to understand the whole January 6th narrative is ridiculous.
I know a guy, I don't know if I need to keep his name secret or not, because it's well known. It's in the news. So I guess I'll just say he's John Schaefer. Do you know John Schaefer?
I don't.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guitarist for a metal band called Iced Earth. He was at January 6th. And I got to know him because I've had him on the Tom Woods Show before any of this happened. And I had dinner with him. And he said, look, I didn't go there because I'm some Trump sycophant. But he said, I went in to the Capitol because I heard that the police were beating up an old man. So I went in. And he said, now, in retrospect, I should have known that this would be nothing but trouble. But I did it. And he accepted that. And interestingly, I had my daughter with me. So he and his daughter were there, and then my wife and I and our daughter at this dinner. And my daughter, we had explained to her as we drove there who this guy was and what was being done to him and what he was facing. And so when she arrived at the dinner, my daughter was filled with righteous outrage about what happened. And he stopped her and said, I should not have done it. Like he didn't want to hear a whole lot of arguments. I shouldn't have done it. But at the same time, they ruined his career. They did so many terrible things. So he was sentenced to probation and community service. But the problem is he's still facing a civil suit, which so often seems like a second chance to go after somebody they couldn't get the first time.
Yeah. Yes.
And I don't know legally what they can do to stop that, but I do know that when I'm pretty sure he was in solitary confinement for a while and he didn't know what to do. I got him Mark Victor to go in there and help him out. And if it wasn't for Mark Victor, I don't know where he'd be.
Yeah.
So I know a guy who, in fact, he came to my Christmas party. And there was somebody talking to him, not realizing who he was, talking about the outrage of what's being done to these January 6 people. And he just sat there and very politely nodded. I thought, this must be rough. So now he faces the civil suit. And I wish there was some way where they could just throw that out. I don't know how any of it works, but geez,
yeah.
I mean, it sure seems to me like a lot worse people have done a lot worse things and faced a lot less, a lot fewer repercussions.
Yeah. And, I think also, Tom, what's really interesting is I know it seems like an ancient history, the COVID lockdowns, and, people want to forget about it. The people who are guilty of crimes want us to forget about it. But, 2020 and early 2021, there was still so much going on that was wrong. And so the solitary confinement for a lot of these people, that was justified under COVID reasons. It was like, oh, COVID, we've got to keep people in solitary confinement, right? So it's like the repercussions of COVID have continued to just magnify, right? And some of the mistreatment that many of these people went under regarding due process, right? So I think, number one, I think it's great for people to take responsibility for making bad choices. I had the opportunity to go into the Capitol or to go on the Capitol lawn, and wisdom prevailed. I'm making a documentary. Of course I want to go in there with a camera, but it didn't take me long to realize, this is not going to be a good idea. And, I was not surprised what happened as a result. I was surprised at the level of weaponization and how many people they went after. I frankly was, but I thank God that I didn't go in there, and that because, it's no joke to have to spend time away from your family, going to prison, become a felon, whatever, or even if you're just a misdemeanor, it just is a real problem. So I think, and Jake, he takes responsibility for what he did, the bad choices that he made. But at the same time, we can all recognize, when due process has been violated and when the legal system has been weaponized in an uneven way towards your political enemies. And, I think it's also something people need to keep in mind that, moving forward, it's like, don't talk to the police, don't talk to the FBI without a lawyer, and do your best to stay out of the way of a government that wants to do harm to you. We've got to find a way to balance having courage, standing our ground and standing for our rights, and also recognizing that the system still is rigged against us, and it can have severe consequences. So I think we've got to be prepared to become a target of the government if we're going to continue to do the work that we do.
Hey, everybody, the beginning of the year is an opportune moment to say, I'm finally going to do that important thing. Well, trust and will makes creating your will easy. I mean, really easy. And look, I know it's something we don't enjoy talking about, but I don't want my family scrambling after I'm gone. I do not want them going through lengthy and expensive legal proceedings, or God forbid, having the state make major decisions. So I enjoy the peace of mind of knowing that my assets and wishes are secure. Each will or trust is state-specific, legally valid, and customized to your needs. Trust and will has made the whole process easy and affordable, which is why it's been used by hundreds of thousands of families and has an overall rating of excellent and thousands of 5-star reviews on Trustpilot. Check off one of your goals early this year with Trust and Will. Protect what matters most in minutes at trustandwill.com/woods and get 10% off plus free shipping. That's 10% off and free shipping at trustandwill.com/woods. Now, if I listen to, let's say, right-wing sources, I'm treated to a version of events, complete with video, showing people peacefully walking around inside the Capitol. But if I watch footage, let's say, that Chuck Schumer might provide, I see a lot of people, rushing to get in, breaking windows, chaos. So how would you actually describe what really happened and what the proper word to describe it would be?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because American Shaman is actually my second January 6th film. I have another film called J6, A True Timeline, which is on Twitter for free. You can go to the Jason Rink. It's on my Twitter feed there, or J6 True Timeline, I believe, on Twitter, and you'll find this video. It's an hour and 10 minutes long. What we did was we have the largest archive of publicly owned January 6th footage that I know of. Body cam footage, CCTV footage, all of the user-generated content that was there, all of the parlor footage, everything. And we went through thousands of hours of that video, and we put together what I would call like a forensic breakdown of the events of the day as they unfolded. And if you watch that video, J6, A True Timeline, what you'll see, and what I discovered when we were making that project, was that January 6th was a constitutionally protected peaceful protest that turned into a riot. Because that's what happened. And when you start pulling back the curtain a little bit, what I see, and we show in that film as well, there were people on the right and January 6th people who were like, oh, I wish you wouldn't have shown that. And then there's people on the other side, they're like, oh, you're showing this, I wish you wouldn't have done it. We said, well, listen, this is what happened. This is what it looked like. And again, it's edited, it's an hour and 10 minutes, but we think we did a very even-handed way of highlighting the day. And what you see is that there was 500 barricades that were removed prior to January 6th that were up. They were bike rack barricades that somebody at the Capitol said, let's get rid of these. They got rid of extra barricades. There was less police. We have body cam footage of police officers who are saying, we were set up, we weren't prepared. Why didn't they send us here with gas masks? Very frustrated about the day. We have a whole sequence that shows that the Capitol Police, and the MPD violated protocol about firing on peaceful protesters. There's a whole lot of legal framework for how they're supposed to begin shooting munitions at protesters that was absolutely not followed. And So we do see that the police started firing first. They are the ones who started the riot in our opinion. And I think the footage shows. And they also multiple times gassed themselves off of the terraces. So it was a windy day and they started using gas on the protesters, and it resulted in them getting gas in their own faces and having to retreat into the Capitol, which left the Capitol able to be taken over. So when you look at the way that the events unfolded, again, it was a peaceful protest that turned into a riot. I believe that the police officers sort of threw the first match on the powder keg, and then there was tactical issues and security stand downs, perhaps. Not perhaps. There absolutely was security stand downs for whatever purpose. I'll leave that to people to decide. And now we know as well that there was 20 plus federal agents or informants, excuse me, not agents, but paid informants who were there that day. That's been revealed. Those are just the ones we know about. And so, that's how I see it. I think there's a lot of bad behavior on the side of the MAGA protesters. I think there was absolutely Antifa or other kinds of instigators in them who were looking to cause trouble. And at the end of the day, there was 5 protesters who were killed. No police officers were killed as a result of, January 6th attacks. There's some questions about some of the officers who did die, but 5 protesters died that day. And we cover that in that film as well. So that's what it is. And so I think there's lessons to be learned from it. I think we've got to be wise to not fall into potential honeypots that the feds want to set up for us. I think that anybody who's involved in political activism of any kind needs to assume that feds or informants are being sent in to infiltrate those groups, to try to gather intel, to try to suss out the networks, and to potentially entrap people into bad activity. So I think we've got to be on guard for that. And it's not just when there's 500,000 people. You're in a Telegram group of 1,000 people. You got to assume that somebody in there is a bad actor. Those are the things that I think we can walk away from it understanding. And yet, one thing that I think is interesting, Trump, again, he was just, they certified the votes today as we're having this conversation, and he's going to be the 47th president. One thing that the media and the establishment tried to do for 4 years was to get Trump to admit that he lost the 2020 election. And he just never would do it. And he still hasn't done it. Now he's being sworn in. That, I think, is one of the biggest wins from Trump, is that he never caved to that, right? And so on January 6th, 2021, you had 500,000 very pissed off people in this city who believed that Trump had the election stolen from him, and they were not allowed to have their grievances, redressed. And so I think that's the other thing to learn and take away from this, is that political activism still does work, still having our voices heard, but that the government wants to shut that down once and for all. And January 6th has been used to create a chilling effect so that people will not assemble and protest for fear that, things are going to get out of hand, or that another January 6th is going to happen, or people are going to be entrapped into a thing. So I don't know if I answered the question, but I attempted to.
Well, I'm thinking everybody said, and I probably assumed that they were right, that if he doesn't abandon this line of argument, it's going to really hurt him. And maybe with some people it did, but not enough to stop him from winning. So,
Yeah.
That was the thing. He's got to get off this, and he didn't, and it apparently made no difference. Now, the other thing I want to ask you before I forget about it is, what is your sense of this whole controversy about Ray Epps?
We have a substantial section in J6 and True Timeline about Ray Epps. We show a lot of more video footage of Ray Epps' movements of the day. Many people they'll have seen some of it, but a lot of it they probably wouldn't have seen. What we know about Ray Epps is that he was charged with a misdemeanor, and I believe if he got anything, it was probation of some sort. Like it was it was a throwaway. I don't think they would have ever charged Ray Epps if it weren't for the public outrage about it. The Ray Epps story became so big, and he was one of the only people that was on camera multiple times telling people to go into the Capitol. We have footage of him on the front line helping to push this huge Trump sign into the line of the police. I mean, if anybody should have done time, for January 6th, Ray Epps is one of those people. There's plenty of people who did not have the incriminating evidence, that is out there for Ray Epps. And so the question is he a Fed or is he an informant or something like that? And I think there's Laura Logan did a extremely good 2-part series on Ray Epps, by the way, that you can find at truthandmedia.com, I believe, and digs into it very interestingly because, I don't know if you could know a guy named Baked Alaska or are familiar with him, but he's sort of an online personality. He was from the same city as Ray Epps, and there's some really interesting things that come out in Laura Logan's piece, whether or not maybe Ray Epps was sort of following Baked Alaska. Like, was he put in to try to infiltrate Baked Alaska's like sort of Groyper America First network? Because Baked Alaska was also the person who was filming him on January 5th, talking about going into the Capitol. So he's showing up. He's a Where's Waldo character of January 6th, Ray Epps. And he showed up multiple times to the Stop the Steal journey near and around Baked Alaska. And so it's very interesting. So I think that he was given such a light charge, a misdemeanor, that he didn't do any prison time, that there was testimony that he gave. This is also in J6 A True Timeline, where he texted, I think, his cousin or something, or his nephew, and said, I orchestrated it. Like, it's very sus. And so I think people should go watch the J6 A True Timeline and then come to their own conclusion. But I definitely think Ray Epps was a protected asset, if not before, afterwards for sure. But he has a lot of indications that he was a protected asset. And, hopefully we're going to get the names of the protected assets and the confidential human sources in the Trump administration. I don't know how far Trump's going to keep, pushing this thing. Like, he may just commute the sentences, which is the most important thing, or pardon people, and then prosecute, people like, or investigate people like Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland and whatnot. That would be great. How far down the rabbit hole does Trump and the Trump administration need to go exposing the wrongs of January 6th? I think that remains to be seen. I think people want a lot of other things to happen. And if justice can be served by releasing people and maybe finding a couple of people who did violate the law, the January 6th committee, for example, who had been reported destroyed a lot of the evidence that they gathered. Those kinds of things I think are important, but I don't know that we'll ever find out who those informants were.
Hey everybody, I'm inviting you to forget all about Clown World for a week and to join me on the voyage of a lifetime instead aboard the Tom Woods Cruise. That's a full week of not having to justify yourself in front of others and having normal conversations with people who aren't brainwashed or IQ deprived. But I offer you far more than mere sanity, dear listener. Aboard the Tom Woods Cruise, I'll be hosting the biggest murder mystery party I've ever held. We'll hear from some of your favorite Tom Woods Show guests, too, and you'll mingle and dine with them. We'll enjoy great food, thrilling excursions, and fascinating talks, and we'll play games that, if previous cruises are any guide, will have you in hysterics. Not to mention, attendees at those previous cruises, which I hosted with my colleague Bob Murphy, made lifelong friends on board, and I bet you will too. Now, let me anticipate the most common objection. Woods, I don't like cruises. You're wrong. You mean to say I don't like cruises other than the Tom Woods cruise. You don't like cruises because the entertainment is lame, there's nothing to do, and you're surrounded by doofuses. But on the Tom Woods cruise, the entertainment is a blast. We pack the week with fun and unforgettable activities, and you're surrounded by the cream of the crop of the dissident world. And for you night owls like me, the conversations can go on until late into the night. Scott Horton will join us this year, and trust me, that guy'll talk as late as you can stay awake. So you ready to spend a week with me? and enjoy nonstop fun aboard the first cruise I've hosted in 6 years? Well, time is running out, so get the details right away at tomwoodscruise.com. And if you're looking at it on a mobile device, you know the 3 little lines are the universal symbol for menu, so click those lines to see our itinerary, special guests, and all the other details. tomwoodscruise.com. If we knew only the half of what was really going on out there, Jason, but I think you're right. I think he's going to feel like, I have only so much political capital and I have 127 things to accomplish.
Yeah.
So it could well be that that's exactly what's going to happen, exactly as you described. We'll try to put an end to this with getting these people out and overturning all that, and then maybe going after a couple of people.
What I want to say is, it would be amazing to get 1,000 January 6th people, some of who are still locked up, some of them have already been released, but to get those people out into the world telling their stories. Because here's the thing, what people don't, it's hard to remember and go back to this, but right after January 6th, that's when Twitter did this mass, deplatforming of everybody. Everybody got banned. People whose devices were here got banned off of social media, Facebook, Twitter, all of that. Then people got arrested. People got thrown in jail. Nobody wanted to talk, right? Nobody wanted to say they were at January 6th for months. So there hasn't been the opportunity to sort of debrief on the day or the events leading up to the day. I think it'll be very interesting when you have hundreds and hundreds of people who may be in prison right now, and other people who are out, if they get to a place where Trump makes it so like, hey, all is forgiven, no risk, everybody can start sharing notes. And you know how the internet is in its sleuthing, which is to really come up with the answers. Some of the people who are in prison or have been thrown in prison probably know who some of those confidential human sources are. Some of those people are going to be able to talk about the treatment that they got in the prison, talk about all of the things we haven't heard. So I think that we may enter an era of hearing the stories of people to be able to continue to put together everything once and for all. And finally, we've got we've got footage that's never been released. Mike Johnson was supposed to release it all. There's a lot of it on Rumble, but a lot of it's not there. A lot of it's been held back. We want all the footage. We want to get all the footage. We own it as the people, and let the internet sleuths start cobbling it together. We did our part with J6, A True Timeline, and again with the American Shaman. But I think we may, if Donald Trump does 15% of what he says he's going to do, I think we could see, and if the internet remains free, or pockets of the internet remains free, we may enter in the era of declassifications and truth and exposing government wrongdoing like we've never seen in the history of America. And frankly, that's one of the things I'm most excited about. Let's just get it all on the table. Let's put the chapter that we've been in since essentially the JFK assassination behind us, and start again. I don't know if Trump's going to have the balls to do that. I don't know if he is going to have the support he needs to tear the intelligence agencies down to the studs, but he's got my support if he decides to.
I want to make sure, I think we may have jumped so breezily into the conversation. There's a chance that I might not have asked you for people who, either are vague on the details or maybe even are listening from outside the United States, exactly who Jacob is and what his role in this was. And then I want to ask you about your conversations with him.
Yeah. So, in November 2020 on election day, I was watching the returns like everybody else. And, I wasn't like a huge Trump guy. Like I voted, in 2020, I voted for him, but I didn't in 2016. I didn't know any of the people in MAGA. I was still pretty much in the libertarian quadrant of my political associations. And so I just, through a series of circumstances and conversations, I managed to get me and another partner embedded as a documentary team with Ali Alexander, who was running the Stop the Steal movement. That was the nationwide election protest. And I don't know, depending on who's listening to this, this thing was massive. It's possibly one of the biggest political protest movements in U.S. history. I mean, we went all over the country. Tens of thousands of people were coming out to this. This was during still kind of like lockdowns in places. And you had these MAGA people coming together on the town square, huge rallies all over the country for about 3 months leading up to, or 2.5 months leading up to January 6th. And so that's how it all started for me. And so we ran into Jake in Arizona. We saw him protesting there in his outfit, or sometimes he'd be wearing a suit, running the bullhorn. He would introduce speakers at rallies. He was just a political activist in Arizona. We just kind of saw him around. And then we were in DC in December and we ran into him again. This is December of 2020. And so we did an interview with him in December of 2020. So this is before January 6th. We interviewed the Q Shaman. We sat down with him, just kind of asking him why he was involved in Stop the Steal and everything. And he's really just was like a new age Alex Jones-esque conspiracy guy. He was like into Q, which Q was like the big, I call it the, golden corral of conspiracy theories, right? It's like this buffet of all the conspiracy theories that you have come across on the right, with a little bit of like, drinking blood and, child sex trafficking thrown in, right? And so that was Jake, and he was an interesting guy, but he really just was an activist, and so he was very unknown prior to January 6th. That's when America and the world got to see him because of the photos that came out. And so when we were here on the ground January 6th, the other thing people might not realize is cell phone service was terrible on January 6th. You couldn't get any reception because there were so many people in here. So those of us who were on the ground didn't even know people were in the Capitol. A lot of us, like, I'm standing outside the Capitol, see a ton of people out there, but didn't even know people got in. And so that afternoon, when I finally got some cell service, I saw Jake's picture, and my filmmaking partner texted me and said, Jake got into the Senate, So Jake gets into the Senate on Mike Pence's chair with his horns and face paint and his fur pelt and his bullhorn. And we said, oh man, we got to find out how he got in there. Like, how did that happen? Like, what, where, why? So we texted him and he sat down with us the next day and he told us the whole story. And what was kind of amazing about it was he told us all of these things that we had no reason to believe were true because none of the footage had come out yet, right? So this is just hours after January 6th. And so he said, yeah, I went into the Senate and I said a prayer, and we're like, what? And then he's like, oh yeah. And then there was a guy who tried to break into the break room and steal some muffins, and I stopped him. And we're like, what? And it's like, he just kept saying all of these. He's like, oh, I walked in an open door. And we're like, what? So
the muffins thing, he says, look, we're not Antifa. We don't steal things. You're not going to take those muffins.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's really like a righteous guy. Like he's got a very clear sense of like cosmic righteousness, right? Like karmic energy. And so he was telling us all these things that were like, can this possibly be true? Right? Well, lo and behold, the footage starts coming out. We're like, oh, he absolutely is telling us the truth. Oh, there he is. He's praying behind the, he didn't commit violence. He's being escorted around by police. And we're like, holy cow. So it was at that moment, and that was just right in the matter of a few days that we recognized, oh, this is a big story. And we recognized pretty quickly he was going to go down and go down hard. Like the feds were going to come after this guy. And when we talked to him on the 7th, he had no fear of being arrested. He's like, I didn't do anything wrong. This is the Capitol's the people's house. That's a funny boomerism, right? It's like, all right, tax dollars straight to the Capitol. That's our place. It's like, yeah, what happens when you try to go inside, right? Okay. So, and then what we did was we connected with the guy who rode to and from Arizona with him, who was filming him. And so we ended up working with him to get all of his footage to come to find out Jake talked to the FBI on the way home to Arizona without a lawyer, all of this stuff. And so we got all of the footage of his calls with the FBI. we go out and we interviewed Jake's lawyer, who's just a really outrageous character in this film. And so, we got all of the pieces. We kept talking to Jake from jail, as he got more and more, as the reality of what was happening to him started to become manifest. And he starts to realize, man, I'm going to prison. We were there with him during that journey. And then we did an interview with him once he got out. He did get out in May of 2023. So he's been out a little over a year and a half. And so I mean, he's just a character who made a couple of bad decisions, was in the right place at the right time, or the right place at the wrong time, however you want to put it. That's how we got to know him. And this story just fell into our lap because of the work that we were doing. And it's one of those things that I couldn't replicate it if I tried. And also, I think there's a lesson here in following your sort of your gut on a project. Like I felt called to go cover the Stop the Steal rallies. My wife, there was times she was not super happy about the fact that I just was like left town for 8 weeks, but I just felt compelled to go cover this story, and it led me to this great story. And I'm super proud of the film. Jake likes the film. It treats him very even-handedly. And
when was the most recent time you spoke to him?
I've chatted with him online. I haven't spoken to him personally for a little over a year, I think. But yeah, and he's as far as I know, he's doing fine. He's out in Arizona.
Does he feel like Trump in some way betrayed him and the J6ers?
That was a narrative that came out in the media that Jake had said he felt betrayed by Trump. And we've got a moment in the film where we're talking to him when I think that comes out. And Jake didn't feel betrayed by Trump. Jake took full responsibility for what he did. And one thing was really amazing about it, when Jake got out, he made this video statement on Twitter. And he basically said, I harbor no ill will to my captors. I forgive them because that's what Christ would have me to do. So, even in what I think was him being railroaded and being treated very poorly, and that he never should have spent a day in prison, his attitude about the whole thing has been so incredible. And I think there's a lot to learn from that, frankly. And, I think Jake and his dealings with me and my experience with him has been a stand-up guy, and he has been an honest guy. Everything that he has said to us panned out and turned out to be true. And so, when I weighed his story against the federal government and media story, I knew which one was accurate, right? But yeah, so and he's back online. He's got over 100,000 followers, and he talks about some pretty out there stuff. But he's a good guy, and he's getting back on his feet.
Well, of course, on the show notes page, tomwoods.com/2591, as well as in the video description, I'll have a link to how people can watch American Shaman. We'll link them right on over to Apple TV. And of course, to you, Jason, so people can follow. You're saying it's the Jason Rink? I follow you, so I don't even look at it. But
yeah, my Jason Rink handle, I still can't get back from Twitter. I don't know why. They won't get it back. So I'm the Jason Rink now and forever. And but yeah, I'm over there. I stay pretty active over there. Tom, I'll make sure you have a link to the J6 A True Timeline doc. People can watch that for free. And then American Shaman, listen. You can buy it right now for $10 or rent it for $5. I spent over $100,000. I don't even want to tell you how much I spent making the film out of my own pocket. I was committed to it. And so, listen, I ask people to support it just because that's the way I can keep making these kind of projects. It's just independent media. I had opportunities to sell this footage to CNN so they could use it to tell their narrative. And I could have made a lot of money. And I said, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm going to tell a story with integrity. I turn down opportunities to give up creative control and let somebody take this story and turn it into something that wasn't true. And so I've spent 4 years trying to get it out to the world. It's finally there. And if people want to support me and support independent work, man, throw me a 10 spot on Apple TV and you'll have something to cozy up on the couch and watch, this week or this month in the aftermath of Jan 6, 4 years later.
Well, look, I don't think anybody can deny that Jason Rink has put in the effort and the time and made the sacrifices. I don't think any among us can say that we've done more than Jason, we've endured more than Jason. I mean, I know that on some level, there's a certain badassery about being canceled and I can't get a hotel in Las Vegas. But on another level, that's really, really unjust and at the very least annoying and at the worst, kind of terrifying. I mean, I think we ought not to minimize it. But you went through a serious thing. And I get you're not a crybaby, so you're not going to focus on that. I'm focusing on it for you because I need people to understand the injustices you endured. So if all we're asking for here is $10 in exchange for a really well-made documentary, I don't think that's a whole lot to ask for.
Well, and I wanted to put a button on this because what I didn't say was, it is on Apple TV, which is kind of the amazing thing, right? So I'll tell you, I just want to tell folks kind of how this happened, and it should be coming to other platforms moving forward. After Trump won the election, I decided to reach out to a contact I had in the industry. And I said, hey, listen, got this film here. You guys want to take a look at it? And, they got back to me and they're like, wow, yeah, we want to put this thing out. We think this is going to do well. We think international audiences are going to really be interested in this. And I said, great, let's do it. So, I only got this put together, right after Trump, the election, and they put it all together, got it to the platform, Apple approved it. And I think that it is possible that we're at the front end of a correction in a pendulum that's swung the wrong way. As a company that is in the market, to recognize that over half the country voted for Trump after he committed January 6th, you're leaving money on the table to not serve content to a market that might be interested in it. And I think the film I've made is accessible to audiences, whether or not you like Trump, right? I just think it's an interesting story of an interesting character. But I do think that after Trump won, I think we may see the softening of some of that. I do think you may see more projects like mine getting to the major platforms. And listen, it may just be for the sake of dirty money, but that's what we love. We love market forces that are more powerful than biases, right? So I hope we're at the front of that wave. I hope my film represents the first of many that will come, that people won't have to go to some random corner of the internet to go find it and enjoy it. So I'm excited about it. I feel like it's a big victory and a vindication, and don't know what my next project is, but I'll keep you informed when it comes around, man. So appreciate you having me on, man.
Oh, absolutely. And let me also tell people that, can I tell them that you're doing something for me?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, because now that I said it, I guess I have to tell them, but
yeah.
I could have edited that out, I suppose. But let's just say, all right, I have a mastermind group. It's great. And I want to do like a short, like promo-y video about it. And I want to do a somewhat longer video about it, because I can't express in words alone what seeing the cool things we do and what our discussions are like and all that can accomplish. And the first person I thought of to come do this was Jason Rink, because he's done tremendous work in the past, for me specifically. But also, I'm looking here in my office. People can't see this, of course, but I have two things. I have a lot hanging on my walls here in the office. And one of them is the film poster for Nullification, which you made.
Yeah.
And the other one is a poster of the Ron Paul rally that you and I hosted with Jordan Page back around like 2011 or 12 in Oklahoma.
My gosh, so long ago, man. It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, and boy, we are so young in these pictures.
I know.
So it's so great to still be, in the fight with you and see you doing well. But as I say, I need some promo video work done, and Jason Rink is my man. So
well, if you're coming to the mastermind here in a week or so, I'll see you down there. Come say hi, and I'm sure once people see what's going on there, you're gonna have to put a limit on the mastermind participants, because
in fact, this particular one, I'll just say, I told people who are supporting listeners, supportinglisteners.com, they get a print newsletter. So they already know, but they know the exact name. But let's just say there is I'm not even sure you know this yet, Jason, but there is a guy who's a celebrity in our circles. And he doesn't live that far from where we're having the next meeting of the mastermind.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And he's not a business guy, but he's a really, really smart guy who produces a lot. And I feel like he should have no financial worries. I feel like he should be rich, or at least comfortable. So a few of my guys said, you bring him to this meeting of the mastermind. We're going to force that guy to be richer. So I'll tell you when we're done recording here who that is.
You're talking about, and I agree with you if it's the same person that I think you're talking about.
If there's anyone who deserves it, it's this
guy.
And so he's coming to talk to my best people, and he's going to walk out of there with a brain like this, ready to be more, have a more comfortable life for himself and his family after all the hard work he's done for us. So anyway,
I love that you're creating value in different ways for the Liberty community, man. Like, so many people are out there creating content, and you've been creating content longer and more consistently than almost anybody I can think of. And yet you're doing this whole other thing where you're helping people to figure out, how can I build my business? Like, how can I generate more freedom in my life? Because, not to keep going on, but 80% of the daily experience of freedom that you have in your life has to do with satisfaction in your work, your finances, your relationships, your geography. Most of that's in our control if we can understand how to be more productive, bring more value, and learn from other people who are further ahead than us, in different aspects. It's just super valuable. So I love that you're doing it. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to come help you out with it, because I support that mission.
Well, thank you, Jason. It's a lot of fun. It's a great group. But I'm getting distracted. Let's focus on, I'm not even going to give the link for the mastermind. If you're clever, you can figure out how to find out about it. I want the focus here to be on you and on your work. So do check out tomwoods.com/2591, or just go directly to Apple TV. You're looking for American Shaman, and support old Jason but not just supporting him because you think, well, he deserves a little bit of support. I mean, that's good enough, but also because he's produced something that's really darn good that I think you're going to enjoy. So Jason, thanks for your time. I know that you are up against a deadline, and I think we have just hit it. So thanks so much.
Amazing. Appreciate it, Tom. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com, and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.